John Stockwell served as a U.S. Marine Corps intelligence officer with the CIA in the Congo, and then was assigned to Vietnam in 1973, just after the last American troops left. By 1975, the corrupt government and army of South Vietnam could no longer defend itself, as Stockwell explained.
The problem, of course, was that the South Vietnamese government and army were so totally corrupt throughout, particularly at that time, that they were just absolutely siphoning off all of the Army's ability to fight. The corruption went beyond your imagination. Their ability to squeeze millions and millions of dollars out of the stuff that we were pumping in through the pipelines, steal it, take it, siphon it off, let half of the soldiers go home so that you could pocket their salaries. Then you could sell their uniforms and equipment to the communists and get money from that. Then you would have half of your trucks you could use to haul produce and half of your helicopters to haul heroin. And the result, it was so corrupt, for example, in Tay Ninh province, that if the 25th Division commander was going to engage the enemy, to get a shipment of ammunition, of artillery shells, he would have to make a payment to the regional commander. He would have to get some cash and deliver it, and the guy would send a truckload of shells up for him to fire at the enemy.
The American military-industrial complex was stunned and embarrassed by the rapid fall of its puppet government in Saigon in 1975. The CIA faced budget cuts and sought a new conflict to justify its size and spending. Portugal had just freed its colonies, so there were power struggles in nations such as Angola. Soon after fleeing Vietnam, Stockwell was placed in charge of the CIA's effort to secure control of Angola.
The CIA had just closed down 3 long-term paramilitary operations in Southeast Asia. Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. They'd had over 1,000 paramilitary case officers come flocking back to Washington. They didn't have desks for everybody, much less jobs, and morale was rock bottom low. They wanted a covert action. They wanted a paramilitary encounter. Angola was convenient. There never was a study done of who's who in Angola, who would be best for Angola, who would be best for the CIA or for the United States, or what. There was no study done. Well, the rationale was that the Soviet Union was trying to take advantage of the United States' weakness right after the Vietnam War, that Angola was getting its independence and they were trying to snap it up, and that Henry Kissinger decided that we could not be weak and we wouldn't let them do it. Our own files disproved that. We moved into Angola first and the Russians were responding to us.
The American public was not told that the CIA had begun shipping arms to Angola and hiring mercenaries to fight there. Once news reports about CIA involvement appeared, the effort was spun as a fight against evil communists. Stockwell became disgusted by the CIA effort and quit the agency. He later wrote a book to expose the lies and gave interviews to explain what really happened.
John Stockwell worked for the CIA for 12 years, rising to the rank of colonel. His last assignment was to run America's secret campaign in Angola.
We had set ourselves well above and beyond the law, beyond the Congress, beyond the Constitution. We were lying to the President, lying to the Secretary of State, lying to the Congress about what we were doing.
1974, the Portuguese Revolution. The end of centuries of dictatorship and oppression at home, and of Portuguese imperialism in Africa. But as the colonies gain independence, in the largest, Angola, 3 groups vied for control of one of the richest countries in Africa. Jonas Savimbi, a friend of Che Guevara, but now an anti-Marxist, led UNITA. Agostinho Neto, a Western-educated left-winger, led the MPLA. Holden Roberto led the FNLA. He had been on the payroll of the CIA for 14 years, so he was the obvious choice for the seasoned campaigners back in Washington. The military.
The first briefings on Angola literally went, gentlemen, this is a map of Africa. Here is Angola. And then they went on with a chart to explain there are 3 liberation movements in Angola. One of them is headed by Holden Roberto. He's the good guy. We've worked with him for years, and they use literally good guy. Then the MPLA is headed by this drunken, psychotic Marxist poet, Agostinho Neto. He's the bad guy. And they used exactly so to make sure that people understood. And then, you know, like I say, you pack off and go off to and they come in for the next briefing about Micronesia or somewhere. The superficiality of what I saw fat old men dozing off in subcommittee meetings of the National Security Council in which we were making decisions that were getting people killed. The basic theme was to make it look like a Russian and Cuban aggression in Angola. And so any kind of story that you could write and get into the media anywhere that pushed that line, you did. 1/3 of my staff in this task force was covert action, was propagandists whose professional career jobs was making up stories and finding ways to get them into the press.
3 months after the day that the last helicopter left the embassy rooftop in Saigon, the CIA flew its first plane load of arms to Angola, starting another Third World conflict where the enemy selected by the CIA, no one has attacked us, but we've selected an enemy, is supposedly a threatening communist force, supposedly a Soviet effort to take over part of Africa, and we were marching in there to stop them. January 15, 1975, the 3 Angolan liberation movements got together under the supervision of the Portuguese and agreed to peaceful competition for elections to run the country. Secretary Kissinger's reaction was to say, get me an options paper on what we can do there. Colby came back and ordered the CIA Africa Division Chief to write up an options paper in a half a day's time. 2 days after that, the first plane flew to Angola with arms.
Is the United States involved in any way?
That is not a subject that I'm free to talk about.
Can you deny the report that the CIA has been funneling money into Angola?
I'm just not going to talk about that subject.
When will the American people find out exactly what is happening over there?
I don't know.
They wanted to know were any Americans involved in the conflict, and were we sending any arms in despite our denials, and were we involved with South Africa, and were we recruiting the mercenaries who were showing up there?
And so then you started recruiting this for the CIA, or were you just working on contract?
No, I'm working for FNLA. The FNLA is receiving their money from the CIA. We had 4, it's common knowledge. I'm not blowing smoke on the CIA. I support the CIA and their activities.
We had, I can name 24 CIA paramilitary specialists who were inside Angola training and advising and helping to prepare battle plans and installing communications equipment and helping to run the war. There were 3 foreign white mercenary armies involved in Angola, all 3 of them CIA money and CIA management.
Let me tell you why I do it. And because I don't want to wash dishes. I don't want to drive a truck.
When the adventurers got to Kinshasa, they were briefed by the CIA. They were flown into Angola in CIA aircraft. They were armed with CIA weapons. The leaders were briefed every day with CIA photography of the enemy positions.
I'd like to ask you whether or not CIA or any American government institution or department or agency is involved in recruiting mercenaries in any official or unofficial capacity, directly or indirectly.
It depends how you define indirectly.
The CIA supported President Holden Roberto with $25 million in cash and $25 million in arms.
In the South, where the Cubans and the MPLA had the initiative, UNITA was losing. They were almost helpless, so they brought in the South Africans, they being Savimbi, but also the CIA coordinating with South Africa and encouraging them to come into the conflict, which they did. By early November, our CIA managers were beginning to crow a little bit. The Lusaka station sent in a cable saying that in a few days the MPLA's back would be broken. approaching the 11 November Independence Day, Mobutu's paracommandos tried to attack Luanda, and this task force of 1,500 men in light armor were caught out in the open and shell rocketed with these 122 millimeter rockets. And after that, the United States effort was out of business.
It makes no difference whether United States uniforms are in any way in Angola or any other country. But if we are giving money or weapons or providing any other support that results in the death of human beings, then I think to give a technical response to the question is not responsive to the gut issue that I'm raising.
CIA and the United States government is in compliance with the decision made by the Congress as to how this question should be answered. The Congress had an opportunity to require more than it did. It did not. It decided not to. And in the course of its decisions, in the course of the laws adopted by the Congress, it clearly left a field for this activity.
The CIA's failed effort in Angola only increased and prolonged the bloodshed. The CIA excuses its participation in such criminal activity by stating it was just following orders, as former CIA officer Philip Agee explains.
We have government agencies like the Congress, the Senate Committee, for example, to oversee the CIA, talking about the agency now being under control and that the abuses of the past have now been eliminated, as if the agency wasn't under control all along, and as if what they call abuses weren't ordered by presidents. The main argument is not with the agency, which is an instrument for policy execution, but the main argument is with the president and the people outside the CIA who determine the interests which have to be protected and how, who determine American foreign policy and then call upon the CIA and other agencies to execute that policy.